Hello everybody, welcome back to Code for Teachers. I'm Michael Taggart. This is Chapter 2, Section 2, the while loop. The while loop is one of two kinds of loops that we have in Python. So let's go over the basic concepts. So while loops repeat using a condition, and when the condition evaluates to false, the loop stops. As long as it evaluates to true, the loop will keep going. We often create an iterator variable to control the loop. We'll see an iterator variable in our example, but think of it as a placeholder to keep track of how many times the loop has gone through. And so if we want to use a while loop to loop a certain number of times, we can use an iterator variable to keep track of the number of times that the loop has gone on. Generally speaking, we'll use while loops when we don't know how many times we want to repeat a process, but we know when we want to stop. So we're going to take a look at a while loop in our code example, and it's going to be a countdown, very simple code. We're going to create a program that counts down from 10, and then after we hit 0, it says liftoff. We need an iterator variable to keep track of how many times we've gone through the loop, and that's going to be called count. And then while, see that right there, count is greater than 0, we're going to print the value of count. And then after that, we print liftoff. So one of the nice things about Python is that if you know how to articulate the problem and the steps in English, the translation between the English and the code is pretty minimal. And this is almost exactly what we're going to write inside of our code. All right, so let's take a look at the code example. Let's build it together. So here I am back in my Replit environment. I've got my title, countdown to liftoff, and then I have a couple of comments that just help organize my code. So the first thing I'm going to need is an iterator variable, and as we said in this slide, we're going to call that count. I'm going to say equals 10, because we're starting at 10. We're counting down, not counting up. Now this is where we make our loop. We're going to loop while count is greater than 0. So while count is greater than 0, colon, and then just like the if statement, we indent inside of the while loop to indicate that the code following that indentation is part of the loop. So what did we say we were going to do? We're going to print the number. So we can print, this is the first time we've done this, but we can actually print integers as well as strings if we're just sending integers and no combination of integers and strings. So we're going to say print count, and that'll work out fine. Again, remember, think data types. Count is an integer, right? Not a floating point and not a string because it doesn't have quotes around it. So we're printing count. Now, if I just ended here, we'd be in trouble because what I have is an infinite loop so far, because I've written no code that changes the value of count, right? I'll just keep repeating this line 10 forever because count never gets less than, or never gets smaller, so it never surpasses 0 in the negative direction. So what I need to do is I need to mutate count somewhere in my loop. So I can say count equals count minus 1. I can do that. That is totally a legitimate line of code in Python, but we do have a shortcut for changing values of variables by subtraction and addition, and it looks like this. So instead of equals count minus 1, we say minus equals 1. So that line is equivalent to count equals count minus 1. So we're assigning the new value, decremented by 1, to the value of count. Okay, now this is going to run as long as count is greater than 0, and then after it, it's going to move on down the line, and I need something after this loop for it to run. And what did we say we wanted to do? We wanted to print liftoff. So let's do that. Print liftoff. Okay, let's run this code and see what happens. Okay, so on each line, we get 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then liftoff. So it did 10 print statements inside the loop and then 1 outside of it for liftoff. Okay, that's it for the while loop. In our next video, we're going to go over the for loop and how it differs in its application and utility from the while loop. I'm Michael Taggart. Thanks for watching Code for Teachers.